Hey guys, tonight we find ourselves slipping quietly through the creaky gold-trimmed corridors of Versailles. The air is heavy, not with silence but with the scent of roses, sweat and secrets. Powder falls like dandruff from towering wigs, silk slippers scuff on parquet floors, and behind every painted panel, someone is either eavesdropping or undressing. You blink, and suddenly you're standing in a hall of mirrors, candlelight bouncing endlessly off your reflection. But you don't have time to admire it. Someone just slipped past you in a cloud of musky cologne and whispered laughter. The truth is, you probably wouldn't survive this. Not because of scandal or sword duels, but because of the smell. No one's bathed in a week. Someone's pet monkey just peed on a rug. And that nobleman in the corner? He's wearing 5 layers of velvet, 2 layers of powder, and exactly 0 underwear. You've entered the most gloriously unwashed party in history. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And I'd love to know where you're listening from tonight, so drop your country and local time in the comments. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're in France, 1700s, pre-revolution, decadence at its peak, hygiene at its historic low. You're surrounded by powdered faces and elaborate wigs, some housing actual insects. The palace glows with chandeliers, but the floor smells faintly of mildew and damp satin. No one here uses soap the way you know it. Baths are suspicious. Doctors have warned the elite that water can open the pores and invite illness. And so they powder, they perfume, they dab vinegar behind the ears and between the toes. They carry small apples stuffed with cloves just to survive their own stench. You're handed a fan. Everybody has one. Not for heat, but for survival. You open it gently and begin waving it in front of your nose, trying not to gag as a marquise strolls past wearing a corset so tight she hasn't taken a full breath since Tuesday. She eyes you with vague amusement. She's already seen 6 lovers today. 3 of them were priests. Someone nearby drops a glass. No one looks. Glass breaks often here, especially after the 4th course of dinner, which, by the way, started with candied snails and ended with a roasted swan that still had ribbons tied to its beak. A man in a crimson waistcoat leans in. His breath smells like wine, meat, and a hint of ancient regret. He compliments your beauty. He might be 80. You nod politely, unsure whether to flirt back or flee into the hedge maze. Suddenly, a bell rings. It's not for mass, it's not for dinner. It's the Queen's signal. She's decided to change into her second dress of the evening, and yes, you're invited to watch. You follow the gentle stampede of silk and powdered shoulders down the marble hallway toward the Queen's apartments. The air grows thicker with every step. Floral perfume, stale sweat, candle wax, and the sharp tang of something vaguely medicinal. You're not sure if someone's wearing laudanum as cologne, but you don't question it. Inside the royal chamber, the Queen of France is halfway undressed. Calm down, it's ceremonial. She stands stiffly, arms lifted, as her dressing women, yes it takes several, peel away layers of embroidered fabric like she's a well-seasoned croissant. One removes her gloves, another gently unties her bodice. A third, with comical urgency, fans her underarms to keep the scent from traveling. You learn quickly that status here isn't just about who you are, it's about who gets to watch you get changed. You, a temporary ghost in this velvet circus, get front row access, but don't get too comfortable. The room smells like old lace and crushed roses, and someone nearby just whispered something unholy about the king's mistress. The Queen's new gown is powder blue, with silver stitching and sleeves so wide she could smuggle livestock inside them. You stare politely as the women work, tucking, tightening, spritzing her neck with ambergris water, the oil of whale intestines by the way, because that's luxury in the 18th century. At the foot of the bed her pug snorts, turns in a circle, and promptly falls asleep on a pile of embroidered handkerchiefs worth more than your annual salary. You glance around. Every wall is covered in tapestries, every piece of furniture is gilded, but somehow every person in the room smells just slightly overripe. A nobleman standing beside you dabs at his forehead with a perfumed kerchief. He offers you one too. You politely decline. He nods approvingly. The English never understand, he says vaguely, despite you never having claimed to be English. He leans closer. You know, the last time I bathed was the king's birthday. When was that, you ask? He squints upward, thinking. I believe it was raining. You nod. That could have been last week, last year, or sometime during the reign of Charlemagne. Time is loose here, hygiene looser. Suddenly, music begins to waft in from the next room. A trio of musicians, violin, harpsichord, flute, starts playing something frilly and upbeat. This signals the start of the evening's amusements. You're being summoned to the salon, but don't worry, you don't have to dance, you just have to listen, because what's about to unfold is an evening of whispered gossip, dangerously strong perfume, and tales so scandalous you might forget you're surrounded by people who've never once scrubbed their feet. You glide, or at least try to glide, into the salon, hem of your borrowed garment swishing lightly behind you. It's warm inside, and there are more candles than anyone should reasonably allow near this much flammable fabric. A man's wig brushes a flame and singes slightly. No one notices. This happens more often than you'd expect. The room is full of soft murmurs and laughter, not the kind that fills the belly, but the type that masks secrets, muttered just behind fans or over glasses of lukewarm claret. You find a spot near the window, trying to catch a breath of fresher air, but outside, the stables reek worse than the powdered humans. Across the room, a woman fans herself with a painted feather, her décolletage a carefully sculpted landscape of pearls, rouge, and maybe some light deception. She's telling a story, and her audience is enraptured. You listen in, and of course she said it was her cousin, but everyone knows she'd been alone with the Swiss fencing tutor for hours. Gasps perfectly timed, a laugh that turns into a cough. Someone nearby sprinkles powdered cloves into their wig. The scent is spicy, but you're starting to miss the smell of fresh laundry. To your left, an older gentleman attempts to sit gracefully, but groans with the effort. His stockings are stretched, his cheeks flushed with wine or exertion, or both. He pulls a vial from his coat and dabs something behind his ears. It smells faintly like wet lavender and smoke. He looks at you with bleary amusement. They say we reek, he says in a low voice, but I say we preserve. You know what hot water does to skin, opens it, lets the rot in. You blink. He nods, as if that settles the matter. Then he promptly falls asleep upright. The musicians have taken a break, and now a poet takes center stage. He's thin as a reed, and twice as nervous. He clears his throat once, twice, and then launches into an ode dedicated to a duchess's left eyebrow. The room listens politely. A few people clap. One man sneezes so violently his wig shifts backward a full inch. A tray of tiny pastries floats by, balanced with impossible grace by a servant who seems to exist only in the corners of your vision. You take one, some sort of almond rose water mystery, and nearly chip a tooth on the candied garnish. Beside you, a pair of noblewomen argue softly over the merits of goat's milk face cream versus virgin snail slime. You try not to listen but fail. One of them insists the snail must be sung to before harvesting its slime. She swears it increases the shine, and in this moment, surrounded by velvet, gossip, and slightly fermented nobility, you realize no one has mentioned politics. Not once. The kingdom teeters on the brink. Bread is scarce outside these walls. The people are angry. But in here, the only thing crumbling is the marzipan swan at the center of the table. Welcome to Versailles. The hour grows later, though time here seems measured not by clocks but by the melting of candles and the fading patience of one's corset. A footman tiptoes around the room with silver tongs, snuffing wicks with the elegance of someone trained in silence. You haven't moved much, mostly because sitting requires engineering. These chairs aren't made for comfort, they're made for posture, which means your spine feels like it's balancing a textbook, your thighs are gently falling asleep, and you're terrified that if you shift too quickly, something expensive will rip, but everyone else looks perfectly serene. A countess nearby lifts her skirts slightly, not for scandal, but to discreetly scratch the backs of her knees with a lace fan. You pretend not to notice, she pretends not to care. That's the game here. The poet is replaced by a philosopher. He speaks in slow, syrupy French, rolling his R's like he's been practicing for an audience of lovers. His topic, whether the soul can perspire. A few people nod sagely. Someone drops a grape and pretends it didn't happen. You overhear two men arguing about which monastery distills the best cherry cordial. One swears by a convent near Dijon. The other accuses him of heresy. They're both extremely drunk. You quietly vote for neither. The music resumes, this time a gentle minuet. A few couples stand, their movement more float than dance. They don't sweat, they glide, or rather, they try to. One woman twirls, and her wig topples slightly sideways. Her partner catches it mid-air like a hero from a powdered soap opera. Applause erupts. She curtsies, wig held aloft like a trophy, and everyone claps harder. Fashion and farce are never far apart here. A short man in yellow approaches you. His cravat is the size of a baby goose and twice as starched. You're new, he says like he's discovered a wild animal wearing clothes. You smile. It's the safest move. He leans closer and whispers, "Did you know the king has a secret room behind the library? For reading, and for not reading, if you take my meaning." You nod solemnly, as though everyone has their own not reading room. He winks, as if you've passed a test. You're offered more wine. You decline. That seems to confuse people. You're offered more perfume. You decline that too, and now they look mildly alarmed. Refusing scent in Versailles is like refusing water in the desert. But you're reaching your limit. Your nose is numb, your eyes sting faintly from incense, and you're fairly certain the man beside you hasn't moved in over an hour. You glance at him. Yep, he's asleep with his eyes open. Or dead. Either way, he's not interrupting. Somewhere behind you, someone breaks into gentle song. It's a lullaby. Ironically, the room listens, spellbound. The lyrics are soft and slightly suggestive. Even lullabies in Versailles flirt. The fire has died down. The night is cooling. You wonder when people sleep here. If they sleep, or if they simply powder again and begin anew. Outside the tall windows, the gardens are still. You spot a fox trotting across the path, utterly unbothered by royalty. Inside, someone is telling a story about a priest, a duchess, and a bowl of oysters. You're not sure you want to know how it ends. The night drifts onward like perfume on silk, and still no one speaks of sleep.
It's as if the very idea is gauche, something peasants do when the candle runs out. Here, in this gilded fishbowl of powdered courtiers and whispered indiscretions, the real rest is the performance, the pose, the pleasantries, the pleasant lies delivered with a honeyed grin. You're still in the salon, though the mood has changed. The wine is half drunk, the pastries are mostly gone. One nobleman lies sprawled like a painting of moral decline, shoes off, wig askew, muttering something about Voltaire and veal. A servant arrives with a copper basin and a cloth. You expect him to offer a wash. Instead, he simply lifts the basin beneath the chin of an elderly baron and allows him to vomit, discreetly, without ever standing up. No one flinches. Someone compliments the embroidery on the baron's sleeve. To your left, two women are arguing in whispers, low, fast, urgent. Something about a letter, a pregnancy, and a missing brooch. You try not to listen, but the details drift toward you like scandalous incense. She can't hide forever, one hisses. She has to. If he finds out it wasn't his, a laugh cuts them off. Not malicious, just drunk. Someone has stood up and begun mimicking the king's walk, complete with exaggerated steps and jiggling jowls. It's dangerously bold. Half the room gasps. The other half pretends not to see it. You smile against your better judgment. The fireplace pops. A new log is added. The warmth spreads outward, and a man with ink-stained fingers begins reciting a letter from an aristocrat exiled to the countryside. I write to you, he says, theatrically, from a place where no one wears silk and the chickens roam without titles. A few chuckle. You almost do too. The letter is absurd and sincere, the writer clearly devastated to be surrounded by mud and peasants. He describes a world with no perfumers, no powdered wigs, no salons, just turnips and the crushing weight of being slightly irrelevant. Across the room, a younger nobleman, barely 20, sits beside an older widow in deep maroon. They speak in low tones, their heads close. She giggles once, and places a ringed hand on his knee. The young man blushes so hard his ears match his waistcoat. You look away politely. This is not a world where age gaps matter, only lineage, alliances and whether someone looks good in candlelight. The harpist begins playing a lullaby, so soft it barely ripples the air. The fire hisses. A dog snores near the doorway. The room is slowing now. Eyes droop. Voices slur. Movements soften. You lean back ever so slightly, the chair creaking beneath you. Someone nearby mutters something about midnight. You check the window. It's past 3. A few candles gutter out on their own now, their wax forming lazy rivers down golden holders, pooling like pale amber on tabletops and lace. No one rushes to replace them. The room has slipped into that peculiar softness that lives only between very late and very early, the hour when even nobility forgets to pretend. You see a marquis nodding off mid-conversation, his chin dipping, then snapping upright just as his glass slips from his hand. It doesn't shatter, it lands in a cushion. The room exhales a sleepy laugh, like everyone's in on a dream they can't quite remember. Across the salon, a woman sprawls half sideways on a chaise, corset laces loosen just enough to breathe without gasping. Her feet are bare now, delicately crossed, dusted in a light shimmer of powder from where someone earlier spilled their face. Her eyes meet yours. She smiles, not flirtatiously, just with the quiet honesty of someone too tired to keep up the performance. You nod back, and in this moment you're not ghosts to each other anymore. You're just two bodies in a room full of fading masks. Behind you, someone begins humming, a tune without a name, perhaps made up on the spot, or passed down through generations of servants who've heard every secret uttered in these halls. It's not a song of joy or sorrow. It's just sound to remind the silence not to settle in completely. The fire has burned low, the velvet has cooled. You notice that some guests have gone, slipped away like shadows retreating from dawn. Others remain, curled awkwardly on chairs too small for sleep, too precious to be drooled on. You rise, finally, your legs pins and needles stiff. No one watches, everyone's either too tired or too polite to care. You move through the room like a breeze, quietly, reverently, as if tiptoeing through a chapel. In the hallway, things are still, not grand, just still. You pass by a table with a single card left from a forgotten game. A ribbon rests there too, detached from someone's bodice or ego, you're not sure which. You begin to hear the palace breathe, a creak of wood, a sleepy sigh from a hidden servant's corridor, the flutter of something, a moth perhaps, beating its wings against a shuttered window. This place doesn't sleep like you do. It dozes in shifts, it mutters through dreams, it adjusts its wig and drifts back under the weight of its own rituals. You reach a long hallway lit only by moonlight spilling through high windows. The marble tiles gleam faintly, like spilled milk. You follow the curve of it, footsteps hushed against stone, past portraits who do not blink but seem to watch anyway. And somewhere, far off, maybe outside, maybe only in your mind, you hear the distant cry of a night bird. You move deeper into the palace, where the echo of footsteps softens and the scent of lavender fades into something more honest, old stone dust and time. Here, the walls are less decorative, more practical. The silk has retreated, the gold leaf thinned. You're not in the show anymore, you're behind it. Servants' passages run like veins through the skeleton of Versailles, narrow and hidden, with low ceilings and oil lamps left burning like nightlights for ghosts. One flickers as you pass. A cat stares at you from a corner, then disappears through a crack in the wall as if to say, yes, this too is ours. You follow the hallway until it opens again, this time into a gallery with high-arched windows. The moon is your candle now. It casts long beams across the checkerboard floor, silvering the marble busts that line the walls, frozen nobility with noses chipped and expressions unimpressed. Here, the silence hums. You pause before one of the busts. The plaque reads a name long forgotten by most, an uncle to a king who died of gout and boredom. He stares forward, jaw clenched with manufactured dignity. You wonder if he ever laughed, or smelled like violets and roasted pheasant like the rest. Far ahead, a door creaks. You follow it, not out of curiosity but because it seems to invite you. Through it, a small room, wood-paneled, circular, windowless. A single chair sits in the middle. Around it, shelves packed with perfumes. Bottles of every shape and size, clear, blue, rose-colored, stoppers carved into tulips and swans, miniature crowns and bare-chested cherubs. Their contents shimmer in the low light, some golden, others almost black. The room smells like secrets. You sit. This, you realize, is the perfumer's chamber, where scents are born, mixed, bottled and sometimes weaponized. Here, someone has spent entire nights blending just the right notes to mask the evidence of too many days. You lift one vial. The label says nothing, just a faded ribbon tied around the neck. You uncork it. It smells like powdered almonds and lost letters. You try another. This one smells like jasmine and candle smoke, like a love affair that ended in silence. A third. Sandalwood and orange peel. Heat. Dust. The scent of a carriage ride to nowhere. You don't speak. The room wouldn't tolerate it, but you breathe deeply and for the first time since arriving in this perfumed circus, you begin to understand. Perfume wasn't just about covering decay. It was armor, identity, memory. In a world where the body was rarely clean, they cleaned the air around them instead. They bathed in illusion. You stay in the perfumer's chamber longer than you mean to. The stillness here is different, not empty, but concentrated, as if every scent that's ever been bottled in this room still lingers faintly in the wood, stacked one on top of the other, like layers of conversation whispered in a language made of smoke. There's a ledger on the table, open, with ink still fresh on the last page, a list of ingredients: crushed iris root, civet, clove oil, something called amber of the night. You don't know what that last one is, but it smells like the inside of a confession. A notation beside the list reads, "For Madame D, to be worn only when plotting or seducing." You smile, faintly. Everything here has a purpose, even the air, or especially the air. Back in the gallery, the moon has shifted, shadows stretch in new directions. Somewhere in the palace, a door closes quietly, someone heading to bed, or to someone else's. You follow a new corridor now, deeper into the east wing. The rugs are thicker here, the silence heavier. These are the private rooms, the ones not meant for show. You pass by a room with a cracked door. Inside, you glimpse a gentleman alone, standing at a mirror. He's still dressed, but his wig is gone. He holds a jar of pomade, slowly slicking down the wisps of his real hair with deliberate care. He does not see you, or if he does, he pretends he doesn't. In this place, that's considered grace. Another door creaks open to reveal a pair of chambermaids half asleep in a tangle of linen. One stirs, sees you, then closes her eyes again. There is no fear, no surprise, only exhaustion and the comfort of shared space. You keep walking. Down another hallway, you find an alcove filled with portraits, small, intimate, nothing grand. Not the official faces you've seen in gilded frames, but informal ones. Lovers, mistresses, illegitimate children no one speaks of but no one erases. The eyes in the portraits seem to follow you but gently, not with judgment, but with familiarity. You are just one more body passing through these walls. The palace has seen so many, it will see more. You rest for a moment on a bench beneath the painting of a woman whose face is half shadowed, her smile barely there. The plaque beneath her name is missing. She exists here without title, without origin, just presence. Somehow she feels more real than all the powdered aristocrats you've met tonight. You lean back, and the velvet cushion sighs beneath you. It smells faintly of cinnamon and long-forgotten scandal. Outside, dawn begins to press faintly against the windows. The first light of morning doesn't so much pour in as bleed through, the kind of pale blue that makes chandeliers look suddenly ridiculous, like overdressed guests who've overstayed their welcome. The spell of night breaks quietly. No trumpets, no ceremony, just a slow unfurling of truth beneath the powder. You rise from the velvet bench and step back into the corridor. The silence is changing, not deeper but thinner. You can sense the kingdom beginning to stir, the kitchens below lighting their fires, the gardeners rousing to trim hedges sculpted like myths. Somewhere water trickles into a stone basin, not for drinking or bathing but for birds. The halls are empty now, even the shadows seem tired. You make your way toward the outer chambers where the floorboards creak more honestly, and the curtains are simpler. These are the guest rooms, the lesser bedrooms, the places for second sons and forgotten cousins. You pass one door slightly ajar and glance in. A young nobleman lies half-draped across the bed, boots still on, one arm tangled in his waistcoat. His wig rests crookedly on a nearby chair, and his mouth is open in that unflattering way only true sleep allows. A candlestick has burned down to a nub on the windowsill beside him. The room smells like brandy and disappointment. Further down the hall you hear a gentle clinking. A maid is setting out fresh linen. She doesn't acknowledge you, just smooths the bedspread like she's been doing it for 100 years, as if the very act of tidying might keep the chaos at bay. You turn another corner and find yourself in a small gallery filled with clocks. Dozens of them, all ticking but none in sync. They were gifts, mostly, from distant cousins, sycophants, foreign dignitaries who thought a ticking object made time more civilized. They were wrong. The sound is maddening if you stand still too long, each clock marking a separate version of the truth. In this room it's every hour and no hour at once. You move on. The great hall looms ahead now. By day it's a cathedral of sunlight, columns rising like marble trees, frescoes overhead depicting gods that now seem petty and bored. But now, in this early hour, it's caught in transition, neither day nor night. The light is soft, the dust visible, the grandeur gently sagging like a tired costume. You step into the hall. The sound of your footfall echoes briefly, then vanishes. Outside these walls the world is waking up hungry. Bakers sweat over ovens, children run barefoot, horses clatter across cobblestones that haven't been washed in days. But here Versailles exhales slowly, resetting itself, preparing for another night of perfume and fiction.
You step outside at last. The garden air hits you like a balm. Cool, damp, honest. There's dew on the hedges, thin mist curling across the gravel paths, and the faint earthy scent of things that actually grow. After a night of powdered wigs and perfumed air thick with pretense, it feels like inhaling reality for the first time in hours. No music here, no laughter, just the whisper of wind through manicured trees and the soft scratch of your steps on stone. You walk slowly. To your left, topiary animals stand in neat formation. Lions, horses, swans, all carefully trimmed by sleepy gardeners with shears and secrets. A few of the bushes wear the faint damage of last night's mischief. A dent here, a broken branch there, evidence that someone fled through the maze in a stolen corset or on a dare. Farther down, a reflecting pool stretches out like glass, perfectly still, the dawn sky hovering just beneath its surface. You stand by the edge and look in, not at yourself, but at the warped echo of Versailles behind you. It looks softer now, less proud, like a face without makeup. A heron lifts itself from the far bank and sails silently into the sky. You follow the gravel path toward the orangery, where neat rows of citrus trees sleep in stone planters. Some of them are covered, wrapped for warmth in canvas and straw. Even these trees are dressed for court. You pluck a fallen leaf from the path. It's waxy and fragrant, real, unperfumed, perfect. You sit on a stone bench worn smooth by time, and you listen. Somewhere nearby, a servant hums to herself while trimming vines. A pair of birds argue in a hedge. The breeze stirs your coat and cools your face. It smells like soil and silence, and for the first time tonight, you feel still. You think about what you've seen, the powdered illusion of grace, the tired bones beneath the brocade, the desperate brilliant way these people try to outpace decay with beauty, with layers, with laughter and cologne. And you wonder, not cruelly but curiously, how long it will all last. Not the night, not even the rain, but the illusion. Versailles is beautiful, yes, but beneath the perfume, the sun is climbing now, slow and golden, turning the mist into soft light and giving the statues long regal shadows. You rise from the bench, brushing a few stray petals from your lap, and begin walking again, not hurried, just drifting, as if the garden itself is carrying you. There's a low stone wall at the edge of the grounds where the formal paths stop. Beyond it lies the rest of the world. Wild grass, untamed trees, real life. It looks ordinary, even plain, and yet you can't stop staring. There's a freedom in the roughness of it, something unpolished and honest. Behind you, Versailles stretches wide and magnificent, already preparing for another day of deception wrapped in velvet. The kitchens will soon flood with steam and shouting. The courtiers will rise groggily and pretend they slept well. The queen will select her first dress. The king will receive papers he won't read, and the perfume will return. It will be spritzed and dabbed and powdered into the very pores of the palace, until the air is once again too rich to breathe deeply, too sweet to trust. You watch a young gardener carry a watering can bigger than her torso. She moves carefully between the rows of flowers, pouring water like she's performing a sacred rite. She hums a tune you don't recognize. Light, rhythmic, something meant for labor and repetition. A real sound, not for show. No one watches her, no one claps. She just works. You linger a moment longer, wondering if she even notices the palace behind her anymore, or if it's just part of the sky, always there, unreachable, a gilded mirage. Eventually, you return inside. The interior feels different in daylight, less mysterious, less forgiving. The tapestries are just fabric now. The mirrors reflect wrinkles, not magic. You pass through the same hallway from earlier and notice the dust in the corners, the faint crack in a marble tile, a cobweb near the ceiling. Versailles, like anything, shows its age when no one's dancing. A servant offers you a bowl of warm water for your hands. You accept it gratefully, dipping your fingers in and watching the cloud of invisible powder swirl briefly in the basin before disappearing. The water smells faintly of citrus and something floral. You're not sure if you like it, but you're glad for the ritual. Nearby, a wig rests on a windowsill. Sunlight hits it, turning the white powder a dull yellow. Without a head beneath it, it looks almost tragic, like a forgotten guest or a costume from a play that closed too soon. A bell rings somewhere deep within the palace. Morning announcements, perhaps, or breakfast, but you don't follow the sound. You turn away. You wander toward a quieter wing now, somewhere half abandoned, or simply unfashionable. The floors here don't shine. The walls are plain. The servants don't flinch when you pass. They're too busy, too tired, too familiar with the rhythm of this place to waste energy on ceremony. One of them, a boy no older than 15, passes you with a tray of boiled eggs and radishes. He yawns mid-step and doesn't apologize. You like him instantly. A window is open at the end of the corridor, letting in fresh morning air. It cuts through the perfume that still clings to your clothes and settles somewhere deep in your lungs. You breathe in slowly. The breeze carries the scent of damp stone, warm bread and hay. Real smells, honest ones. You didn't know how much you missed them. You step into a small side chamber. It's plain, almost shockingly so. A single wooden chair, a writing desk, an unlit candle stub. There's nothing gilded here. No velvet, no portrait staring you down. Just a window and a view of the stables. You sit. The sounds drift in. Horses snorting, stable boys muttering, the clink of hooves on cobblestone. You hear someone laugh, a woman's voice, rough and real, and then the soft thud of a bucket hitting the ground. This is Versailles too, not the one in paintings, not the one in powdered memory, but the living, creaking, sweating one that gets up early and never goes to the salon. You look down at the writing desk and see a quill resting beside a folded scrap of paper. You unfold it, slowly, and read. It says only, "Don't believe everything that smells good." You smile. It's not signed. It doesn't need to be. You leave the paper as you found it. Back in the hallway, the bustle is rising now. Doors open, voices echo. Someone rushes past, carrying a bouquet of white lilies. Another follows with a wig box and a hot iron. The day is beginning again, and with it, the grand performance. But you walk the opposite direction, back through the quieter passages, past the clocks, the busts, the forgotten hallways of perfume. You slip through the palace like a final exhale. No one stops you. Why would they? You've become part of the scenery now. You descend a narrow staircase, one not meant for noble shoes, and find yourself in a servant's corridor, dimly lit and lined with pale stone. It smells of iron and wax, and something vaguely sweet, maybe spilled cider, maybe yesterday's fruit. The walls are scratched in places, marked by hands and years and hurry. Here, people don't walk, they glide with purpose. Quick feet, quiet mouths. Their presence is constant, but their names aren't stitched into memory. They make Versailles function without ever being part of its story. You nod to a woman carrying linens twice her size. She doesn't return it, but her steps shift slightly, an acknowledgement in silence. That's all you need. The corridor spits you out near the palace's rear courtyard, where the sun is now fully awake. It warms the old stones. A few chickens peck near a cart. A stable boy chases one with a broom, and swears with casual elegance. You stand there for a moment, letting the light settle on your skin. No powder, no paint, just you and the raw morning. A soft clatter pulls your attention. 2 footmen unloading crates from a small wagon. You catch a glimpse of what's inside. Glass bottles packed in straw, labeled in black ink. Bergamot, musk, myrtle, tonka bean, more perfume. You watch as the crates are carried off, down into the workshops where new illusions are brewed daily. You wonder how many drops it takes to bury the scent of fear, of aging, of boredom, of rot. You walk away before you get your answer. Your path takes you toward a gate, an unmarked one, narrow, slightly ajar, tucked between 2 ivy-covered walls, a gate not used by those who matter, or rather, one used only by those who make the illusion matter. You step through it, and like that, Versailles is behind you, still gleaming, still perfect, still hiding. The road ahead is dirt, packed by cartwheels and bare feet. A crow caws somewhere in the trees. The air tastes like dust and milkweed. You inhale deeply and realize your nose no longer stings. In the distance, a farmhouse chimney exhales smoke. Life goes on, and soon, tonight, the palace will awaken again. The gowns, the rouge, the wigs stacked like birthday cakes, the laughter, the sighs, the lies tied in silk bows. You won't be there, but the perfume will be. Always. You walk until the sound of Versailles disappears entirely, until the only things you can hear are your own footsteps, the rustle of wind through tall grass, and the occasional insect skipping along the roadside.
The illusion has peeled away like makeup at midnight. What's left is raw, uncurated, and remarkably quiet. A small village comes into view, just a scattering of thatched roofs and crooked chimneys, nestled in the folds of the countryside. Chickens roam freely. A child in a linen smock stares at you, wide-eyed, clutching a wooden toy shaped vaguely like a goat. Someone's baking bread. You can smell it from here. Yeasty, rich, undeniably real. You sit at the edge of a low stone wall, not because you're tired, but because it feels good to just be still. You look down at your clothes. They still smell faintly of rosewater and civet. Your cuffs are rumpled. Your shoes are scuffed. But you are cleaner now, in some way that has nothing to do with bathing. A peasant passes by with a cart of onions. He nods to you, wordless and brief. That one moment feels more sincere than every curtsy you saw all night. The sun is higher now. Birds wheel overhead. In the field beyond, a man is singing. Just a single verse over and over, tuneless and slow, but honest. He's tending to something that will actually grow. You sit and watch for a long time, and for the first time you realize Versailles never really slept. It only paused, powdered itself again, and stepped back onto its stage. A world built not to rest, but to be seen, to perform, even in its most private corners. You were allowed backstage for a single night. You saw the cords behind the curtains, the dust beneath the brocade, the weary eyes behind the fan, and now here in the chill of morning, you let it go. You take one final breath of real air, unperfumed, unedited, and you close your eyes. Sleep finds you quietly. No fanfare, no violin, just breath, weight, stillness, and for once a night's end without illusion. Good night.